When Amara Jackson's name was deliberately left off the guest list for the most exclusive gala in New York, the organizers thought they could erase her presence without consequence. They didn't know her husband, billionaire tech mogul Ethan Caldwell, would turn their calculated snub into a moment of reckoning that would shake the city's elite to their core. Amara Jackson had always carried herself with a quiet strength, the kind forged through years of navigating spaces where she was often the only one who looked like her. Born in Atlanta to a single mother who worked 2 jobs to keep the lights on, Amara learned early that resilience was non-negotiable. She excelled in school, earning a scholarship to an Ivy League university where she studied computer science. Her brilliance in coding caught the eye of tech recruiters, and by her late 20s, she was a rising star in Silicon Valley, leading teams on projects that shaped the digital world. It was there she met Ethan Caldwell, a tech entrepreneur whose startup had just sold for a staggering 9 figures. Their connection was instant, not just romantic, but intellectual. They challenged each other, built ideas together, and within 2 years, they were married. Ethan, a man of sharp intellect and understated charm, had grown up in a world of privilege, but carried none of its arrogance. His wealth came from his own ingenuity, and he admired Amara not just for her beauty, but for her mind, her grit, and her unapologetic authenticity. Together, they became a power couple, though Amara preferred to stay out of the spotlight. She focused on her work, leading a nonprofit that taught coding to underserved youth, while Ethan's name dominated headlines as his new ventures pushed him into billionaire status. The trouble began when the couple received an invitation to the annual Sterling Gala, an event hosted by the Sterling Foundation, a powerhouse in New York's philanthropic scene. The gala was a glittering affair, attended by the city's wealthiest and most influential politicians, CEOs, and old money families who saw their attendance as a badge of status. The invitation arrived at their Manhattan penthouse, addressed only to Ethan Caldwell. Amara's name was conspicuously absent, despite their marriage being public knowledge and their joint philanthropy well documented. At first, Amara assumed it was an oversight. She mentioned it to Ethan over dinner, her tone light, but her eyes searching his for a reaction. Ethan's jaw tightened as he read the invitation.
He knew this was no mistake.
The Sterling Foundation was run by Margaret Sterling, a woman whose influence in elite circles was matched only by her reputation for gatekeeping. Margaret had a history of subtle but deliberate slights, particularly toward those she deemed outsiders. Amara, a black woman who had risen from modest roots to marry one of the world's richest men, was exactly the kind of person Margaret might resent. Ethan suggested they RSVP together, making it clear Amara would attend. Amara agreed, though a knot of unease formed in her stomach. She wasn't naive. She'd faced prejudice before, but she hoped this was just a clerical error. The RSVP was sent, confirming both Ethan and Amara's attendance. A week later, a follow-up email from the Sterling Foundation arrived, addressed solely to Ethan. It politely noted that due to space constraints, only one guest per invitee could be accommodated. The message was clear. Amara was not welcome. Ethan's face darkened as he read the email aloud to Amara. She sat quietly, her fingers tracing the rim of her coffee mug. She didn't cry or raise her voice. Instead, she said, "They don't want me there, Ethan. Let it go." But Ethan wasn't the type to let things go. He saw the hurt in her eyes, even if she wouldn't admit it, and he knew this was about more than a gala. It was about respect or the lack of it. Ethan began making calls. His first was to his assistant, Claire, a woman who could uncover information faster than most private investigators. He asked her to dig into the Sterling Foundation, its board, its donors, its finances. Then he reached out to a few trusted contacts in New York's elite circles, people who owed him favors. Within days, Claire had a dossier. The Sterling Foundation was struggling financially, despite its polished image. Its endowment was dwindling, and Margaret Sterling had been leaning on high-profile donors to keep the gala's reputation intact. Ethan was one of those donors, having contributed millions to the Foundation's arts programs over the years. Margaret had assumed his wealth came with compliance. She was wrong. Amara, meanwhile, tried to move on. She threw herself into her nonprofit, spending long hours mentoring young coders. But the snub gnawed at her. She'd faced microaggressions before, being overlooked for promotions, hearing whispers at tech conferences about how she must have gotten lucky to land Ethan. This felt different, more deliberate. She confided in her best friend, Nia, over lunch. Nia, a lawyer who'd seen her share of corporate prejudice, was blunt. "They're testing you, Amara. They think they can push you out because you don't fit their mold. Don't let them." Amara nodded, but she wasn't sure what to do. She didn't want to make a scene or give the Sterlings the satisfaction of knowing they'd gotten under her skin. Ethan, however, was already planning. He didn't tell Amara everything, not yet. He wanted to protect her from the details until he was sure his plan would work. He met with his financial advisor, a sharp woman named Priya, who outlined the foundation's vulnerabilities. A significant portion of its funding came from a handful of donors, including Ethan's own contributions. He also learned that the gala's venue, a historic Manhattan hotel, was owned by a real estate group with ties to one of his companies. Ethan made another call, this time to the hotel's owner, a man named Victor, who owed Ethan for bailing out one of his projects years ago. Victor confirmed the hotel could be unavailable for the gala if needed. Ethan thanked him and hung up, his plan taking shape. Days before the gala, Margaret Sterling received a call from the hotel. The manager apologized profusely, citing a scheduling conflict that made the venue unavailable. Margaret was furious but scrambled to find a new location. She settled on a less prestigious venue, a move that sparked whispers among the city's elite. Then, Ethan's team leaked a carefully worded statement to a major news outlet, hinting that the Sterling Foundation had financial troubles and was losing support from key donors. The article didn't name Ethan, but it didn't need to. The message was clear. The foundation was on shaky ground. Amara noticed Ethan's late-night calls and cryptic meetings, but didn't press him. She trusted him, even if she wasn't sure what he was doing. When she asked if they were still attending the gala, he smiled and said, "We're doing something better." She raised an eyebrow but let it go. Ethan was up to something, and she knew better than to underestimate him. The night of the gala arrived, and Margaret Sterling was in damage control mode. The new venue was adequate, but lacked the grandeur of the original, and several high-profile guests had RSVP'd their regrets, citing the news article about the foundation's troubles. Margaret plastered on a smile, greeting guests in a shimmering gown, but her eyes darted nervously. She hadn't heard from Ethan Caldwell, though she'd sent a follow-up email practically begging him to attend. She assumed he'd been scared off by the venue change or the bad press. She was wrong. Across town, Ethan and Amara hosted their own event, a fundraiser for Amara's nonprofit. They hadn't announced it widely, but Ethan's team had quietly invited some of the most influential people in tech, finance, and philanthropy. The guest list was smaller than the Sterling galas, but far more impactful. Among the attendees were a senator, 2 tech CEOs, and a media mogul whose outlet had broken the story about the foundation's woes. The event was held at a sleek rooftop venue with views of the Manhattan skyline, and every detail was impeccable, from the catering to the live jazz band. Amara was the star of the night, though she didn't know it at first. Ethan had insisted she give the keynote speech, something she'd been hesitant about. Public speaking wasn't her favorite thing. She preferred working behind the scenes, but Ethan's quiet encouragement gave her the push she needed. When she took the stage, she spoke with a clarity and passion that silenced the room. She talked about her journey from a girl in Atlanta who taught herself to code on a library computer to a woman leading a movement to empower the next generation. She didn't mention the Sterling Gala or the snub, but she didn't need to. Her presence, her success, was the rebuke. The fundraiser raised millions in a single night. Pledges came not just from Ethan's contacts but from people who'd heard about Amara's work and wanted to be part of it. By the end of the evening, her nonprofit had enough funding to expand its programs nationwide. Guests approached her, offering partnerships, mentorship opportunities, and even speaking engagements. Amara felt a mix of pride and disbelief. She'd spent so long fighting to be seen, and now, in one night, she was undeniable. Meanwhile, the Sterling Gala was a disaster. The smaller venue felt cramped, The food was underwhelming, and the absence of key attendees left the room buzzing with gossip. Margaret Sterling's speech fell flat, and when she mentioned the Foundation's bright future, a few guests exchanged skeptical glances. By the next morning, social media was abuzz with comparisons between the lackluster gala and the electrifying fundraiser hosted by Ethan and Amara. Posts on X praised Amara's speech, with one viral thread calling her the future of philanthropy. The Sterling Foundation's reputation took a hit it wouldn't recover from anytime soon. Margaret tried to salvage things. She sent Ethan an email the next day, apologizing for any miscommunication about the guest list and inviting him and Amara to a private dinner. Ethan didn't respond. Instead, he forwarded the email to Claire, who added it to the dossier. Amara, for her part, felt a quiet satisfaction. She hadn't needed to confront Margaret or make a public fuss. Her work, her presence, and her husband's unwavering support had spoken louder than any argument could. In the weeks that followed, the Sterling Foundation faced more scrutiny. Donors pulled back, and an audit revealed mismanagement that led to Margaret's resignation. Amara's nonprofit, meanwhile, grew rapidly. She hired more staff, opened new centers, and became a sought-after voice in tech and philanthropy. Ethan stayed by her side, proud but never overbearing. He'd made his point, not with anger but with strategy, ensuring Amara's light shone brighter than ever. The story of the gala snub spread, not as gossip but as a lesson. It was a reminder that power isn't just wealth or status. It's the ability to stand up, to stand out, and to make others see what they tried to erase. Amara Jackson wasn't just Ethan Caldwell's wife. She was a force, and no guest list could change that.